Chapter 1: Parallel World. I'm never drinking again, my head is killing me. Lucas heart groaned while rubbing his temples and sat up on the bed. He blinked his sticky eyelids a few times, then opened his eyes and froze. The place he saw felt completely unfamiliar. Wait, this place. Before Lucas' heart could figure out what was going on, a flood of memories suddenly poured into his mind. It took him nearly an hour to sort through everything in his head. One thing was clear: in his previous life, he was just an ordinary game planner. Now, he had somehow crossed into a parallel world. Based on the memories in his mind, something had clearly gone wrong somewhere in this world's timeline, because it was completely different from the one he came from. Thanks to major advancements in technology, every industry had changed in a big way. Just how big, Lucas' heart couldn't say for sure, but the biggest difference he could feel directly was in the gaming and entertainment world. After the war ended, peace returned, and technology exploded. In this world, people no longer had to worry about things like going hungry or not being able to afford medical care. The economy recovered incredibly fast. Since people didn't have to stress about survival and had money in their pockets, entertainment naturally became a booming industry. Gaming, of course, was part of that. In his original world, games were often treated like a public enemy, blamed for everything. Not just in his home country, even overseas it was the same. Why did shootings happen so often? Because games promote violence, they said. So instead of pulling guns off supermarket shelves, they wanted to ban games, the so-called root cause of the problem. But things were different in this parallel world. Here, a well-made game could be considered a work of art. Top-tier game designers were treated like literary giants. Still, one thing stood out to Lucas. In this world, familiar names like Ubisoft and EA didn't exist. Instead, the big names in gaming were studios he had never heard of. Famous developers from his original world were completely missing from this one. People like Hidetaka Miyazaki, who left Oracle to join From Software and create the Souls series. Masahiro Sakurai, who redefined platformers with the Smash Bros. Series. Sid Meier, who defined 4X strategy games. Hayanobu Sakaguchi, the father of Final Fantasy. The Hauser brothers, who pushed the boundaries of 3D open-world design. Hideo Kojima, pioneer of stealth games and cinematic storytelling. Shigeru Miyamoto, a true legend in gaming history. None of these names existed in this world. It was like they had vanished. As for Lucas himself, he was now just a regular student who had graduated less than half a year ago. His dream had been to work in the manga industry. This world, it's a paradise for people in the arts. Looking back at his new memories and browsing some info online, Lucas couldn't help but sigh in amazement. Strict copyright laws and strong protections for creative work, these things were almost unimaginable in his old world. Illustrations, huh? After reading up on the basics of this world from both his memories and the internet, Lucas' heart noticed some sketches sitting on the desk. They were illustrations he had drawn before. Before the crossing, the original Lucas had wanted to become a manga artist. Unfortunately, no matter how many times he submitted his work, it never passed an editor's review. He had also posted some manga online, but they didn't really gain much attention. Besides the small amount of money he earned from those online comics, he also made a living by drawing character art for novelists and doing concept art for game companies. He wasn't well known, and his drawing skills weren't exactly top tier. He mostly just adjusted to whatever each job required. The usual rate for an illustration was around $120, and if the client was picky, he'd have to revise it over and over again. Manga, I don't really know anything about that, Lucas' heart muttered as he recalled the memories in his head. Even though those memories gave Lucas' heart a solid understanding of various drawing techniques, it didn't really help much. After all, the guy before him had barely made ends meet by doing freelance illustration work. As for manga from his past life, Lucas had heard of plenty: One Punch Man, One Piece, Bleach, Naruto, Conan. He knew all the names. But read them, sorry, not really. He had only watched the anime, so how would he know how to actually draw one of those mega-hit mangas? From the looks of it, I might have to go back to game development again, and game dev in this world is seriously fast. Lucas clicked his tongue after doing some research. Unlike in his old world, where each game company had to build its own game engine, overseas companies here still followed that model, but in his new home country, the government actually provided a standard game engine. Everyone knew that making a game involved a bunch of different areas: balance, art, story, level design, and of course, code. And code was the most important and most basic part of it all. It determined how the game actually ran. It was like the skeleton of the whole thing. No matter how pretty or creative your game looked, if the code wasn't optimized, it was basically guaranteed to flop. But in this world, thanks to advances in IT, artificial intelligence had started to take shape and was being used in almost every industry, and gaming was one of the most affected. Things like systems and commands were now handled using AI through the official game engine. No more situations where a programmer had to be metaphorically sacrificed to the gods. These days, if anyone got blamed, it was usually the planners. Of course, even if it was convenient, not every designer could just use the AI as much as they wanted. That's because using AI to write code needed a huge amount of processing power. Each game designer had a set monthly limit. They could also build their own private servers to handle computing, as long as they paid for the license. But building and maintaining those servers wasn't cheap. As for becoming a game designer, there were three main paths. One was to take the annual summer exam held by the game division, pass it, and you'd earn the title of game designer. Another way was to work at a game company for 2 to 3 years. After that, the company could help you apply through official channels to get certified by the game division. The last option was to create an indie game that got recognized by the market. That route was meant for hobbyists or fans who didn't come from a professional background. If your game sold more than 150,000 copies, or got 5,000 total reviews with an average rating above 8.5, you qualified. Meeting either condition was enough. Looks pretty strict, but getting that game designer title shouldn't be hard for me, Lucas Hart mumbled as he read through the info, rubbing his chin. After all, he wasn't starting from scratch. He had all the knowledge and experience of countless veterans from his past life's game industry backing him up. Lucas Hart wasn't aiming for big AAA games just yet. He lacked the skills, resources, and money for that. But when it came to small indie games, he felt confident. He remembered all kinds of amazing indie games from his past life, down to the details. Now that he understood how this world worked, recreating some of those games would be well within his ability. Wait a second, what's this? While Lucas Hart was thinking about what to do next, he suddenly noticed something. There was a translucent blue orb-shaped mark on the back of his hand, like a birthmark. He rubbed his thumb over it, and a transparent UI window suddenly popped up. A system. The word flashed through Lucas Hart's mind immediately. Now that he thought about it, getting a system after being sent to another world wasn't all that strange. But the name of the system. Emotion Collection System. Looking at the golden, flashy UI that looked just like the ones in low-budget browser games from his old world, Lucas Hart went silent. All those shiny effects, it didn't exactly scream serious system. Chapter 2, Whoa, a Golden Legend. Lucas Hart looked at the virtual screen in front of him. The layout was super simple. There was an info button, a machine full of capsule toys like a gacha machine, and next to it was a prize list showing what could be won. Normal skill book, rare skill book, special item. Below that was a number, 473,451. He tapped the info button first, and quickly got the explanation he needed. This was clearly his cheat system, no doubt about it. It was a very straightforward gacha system. Of course, it required points. And earning points was also pretty simple, as long as his work, whether it was a game, video, story, or music, made players, viewers, readers, or listeners feel something like joy, excitement, sadness, anger, fear, etc., he'd get emotion points. Those emotion points could be converted into draw points for the gacha, the 470,000 plus he had now. That was everything Lucas Hart had saved up in his previous life. Reading that, Lucas Hart felt a bit of regret. If I'd known this earlier, I should have gone into event planning instead of level and story design, he sighed. Unlike in this world, where players directly curse the game designer when they're unhappy. In his past life, the planner was always the scapegoat. Favorite character's stats got nerfed, damn the planner. Favorite character got killed off, damn the planner. Server crash, damn the planner. It didn't matter whose fault it actually was. If something went wrong, it was always blame the planner. 100,000 per draw, and a 10 draw costs 1 million with no discount and no bonus pull. Even the greediest games back home weren't this bad. Lucas Hart had thought he had a ton of points, but seeing the draw prices left him speechless. Turns out, his 470,000 points were only enough for 4 single pulls. Still, even as he grumbled, his hands didn't stop. He grabbed the lever and pulled 4 quick times. The gacha machine spun with a loud whir, and 4 capsules popped out one after another. A burst of golden light suddenly flashed from the 4 capsules. Lucas Hart hadn't expected anything good to come out of them. After all, he only had 4 pulls. And with only 3 types of prizes available, there didn't seem to be much of a chance. But now, whoa, a golden legend. Lucas Hart couldn't help but add sound effects in his head, his face full of anticipation. Then, 2 normal skill books, 1 rare skill book, and 1 memory capsule. Looking at the 4 items in front of him, Lucas Hart was speechless. So that golden light was just special effects for the pull. Nice one, system. He grumbled internally, but still reached out and tapped on one of the normal skill books. The skill book turned into a cluster of glowing purple lights, like tiny stars, and merged into his body. A notification followed. Story design +1. As the purple light entered him, Lucas Hart felt his mind grow sharp and clear. Some things about packing and story flow that used to be fuzzy suddenly made perfect sense. It was a strange but amazing feeling, like back in school, staring at a tough math problem, completely stuck. Then suddenly seeing the right formula and instantly understanding everything. He quickly tapped on the other 2 books. Music +1, drawing skills +5. Music came from the normal skill book, while the drawing boost came from the rare skill book. The boost amounts were clearly different, though whether that was due to the skill type or just random numbers, he had no idea. He hadn't drawn enough times to figure it out. Finally, Lucas Hart turned his eyes to the last item. Memory capsule, used to dig up deeply buried memories within 1 hour. Seeing that capsule, Lucas Hart's eyes lit up. This one was good. It was basically like having a temporary perfect memory. In his past life working in the game industry, Lucas Hart had played tons of games, not just for fun, but to study them. Take The Last of Us, for example. A regular player might react like, whoa, awesome, or ah, scary, or crap, I died. But someone like Lucas Hart, coming from the industry, would look at things much more carefully. Why was the story told in that way? Was the monster placement balanced? Why were the maps and cover spots laid out like that? How did the devs hint at secrets and details for the player to discover? With the memory capsule, Lucas Hart could now recall all those past games as clearly as possible. For now, he stored the capsule in his inventory. He wanted to save it. Before starting development on his first game, there were still a few things he needed to prepare. Like getting used to the official game engine, doing market research, understanding which game genres were trending, and figuring out which platforms to release on. All of that needed to be handled first. All right, let's have a look. He closed the system and sat down at his computer, fingers tapping the keyboard as he searched for what he needed. First up, checking out the game engine tools used in this parallel world. Back when he'd worked on outsourced concept art for game companies, he had already installed the official game engine software on his PC and created an account. In this world, that whole system was pretty advanced. You could find things like concept artists, 3D modelers, music composers, even voice actors. All through the built-in platform inside the game engine. Yeah, it's not really that hard, and not that complicated either. It's just that there's barely any resources out there. Lucas Hart quickly skimmed through an intro video, and also searched online for written guides. He now had a basic understanding of how game engines worked. It wasn't that hard to get started. The next thing to look into was the platforms. With the growth of the entertainment industry came a strong crackdown on piracy. Games made with modern engines were built in ways that basically prevented pirated copies from being made at all. Of course, just because there was no piracy didn't mean there was no competition. The industry was still really competitive. Chapter 3: Even capitalists don't treat you like this. Sitting in front of the computer, Lucas Hart now had a general idea of where he stood. The gaming industry, that was the direction he wanted to go in. But just deciding to make games wasn't going to make things easy. Even though the tech in this world made it possible to develop games without having to write low-level code, you still couldn't skip on art, music, modeling, and all the other stuff. And right now, Lucas Hart was in kind of an awkward spot. First off, he wasn't a certified game designer, so he had very limited access to resources. Though he figured that for small indie games like some classics from his past life, what he had was probably just enough. But there was one big issue: he didn't have much money. He had only just graduated, and he was living in Magic City, even though he wasn't in the city center but more toward the outskirts. The cost of living was still pretty high. At this point, he'd only managed to save a little over $10,000. As for the system that could wait, after all, it only gave points when he released completed works. And it didn't even have a feature to trade points for cash. Cold-blooded. "I need to find a way to make money," Lucas Hart muttered, rubbing his chin as he thought about it. He started searching online, trying to get a full picture of the state of the gaming industry in this world. At the same time, ideas were forming in his mind. But then, when he closed a browser tab and saw a folder on his desktop, something clicked. Inside the folder were a dozen or so fully colored webcomic strips. The story was about a group of attractive girls playing water volleyball. It had an upbeat and positive vibe, showing off the energy and spirit of youth. From what he remembered, he didn't actually draw those comics himself. They were given to him by an upperclassman from his university, and he'd helped out by coloring them. Looking at those exciting webcomics, Lucas Hart had already made up his mind. He already had an idea for his first money-making project. It was a match 3 game with cute anime girls that players in his past life really loved. manhwa. It was voted the second most popular game in 2018, topped the global daily bestseller list on Steam, and racked up 71,000 reviews, around 69,000 of them positive. Even most of the 2,000 negative ones were left as jokes or memes. The reason for choosing this game was simple. One reason was that manhwa barely involved any 3D modeling. The other reason was that most of the content in the game was something Lucas Hart could handle on his own. And thanks to its unique features, the game had a big edge even without a big marketing budget, something most indie games lacked. If the goal was to quickly build up some starting capital, manhwa was probably the best option. Of course, some of the more questionable content would need to be changed. But doing everything alone would take too much time. I'll need to find someone to help. With that decision made, Lucas Hart started planning in his head. But first, he had to deal with his hunger. Feeling a wave of hunger, Lucas Hart stood up, grabbed his keys and phone from the table, and headed downstairs to find a place to eat. Never underestimate the meat slicers at Golden Bowl noodle shops. Those knife skills are insane. Lucas Hart picked up a slice of beef with his chopsticks, marveling at how thin it was, almost see-through. Soaked in the noodle broth, the beef looked almost crystal clear. 6 slices of beef were laid neatly on top of the noodles, with chopped green onions and cilantro on the side. Whether in his past life or this one thing about this beef never changed: it was thin. Sure, there wasn't enough meat to even fill the gap between your teeth, but the noodles were actually pretty good. Nice and chewy, and the broth made from beef bones was rich and flavorful. After finishing his meal, Lucas Hart paid the bill and left the shop. On his way home, he made a phone call. After about 3 rings, someone picked up. "Senpai, the draft you gave me is done. I'll send it over soon. Also, are you free tomorrow? There's something I'd like to talk to you about." "No problem. Let's meet at 1 p.m. tomorrow at the cafe by the crossroad in Garden District." After hanging up, Lucas' heart stretched lazily. He had already decided manhwa would be how he earned his first pot of gold. But if he had to do all the work by himself, he estimated that even if he worked non-stop, it'd still take him around 2 months to finish the game. And that's assuming he worked like crazy every day. So if possible, it'd be best to find someone to help. Whether he could or not, that was still up in the air. At 1 p.m. the next day, Lucas' heart showed up at the cafe on the island, right on time. By the window in the first floor lobby sat a young woman, about 24, wearing glasses. She was dressed in a white casual outfit and had headphones on, listening to music. "Thanks for coming, senpai," Lucas' heart greeted her as he walked over. "No trouble at all, my place is nearby anyway." Rachel Ruan took off her headphones, smiled lightly, and shook her head. Before Lucas' heart could say more, she grinned and asked, "So, Lucas' heart, what do you want to talk about? Have you finally come around and decided to join my studio? I've told you before, going all in on original comics isn't the smartest move. You could totally start by doing doujin works and build up from there. A lot of famous artists in the industry started off doing doujin stuff under pen names, you know. I also saw the artwork you colored, Lucas. You're really talented." Rachel Ruan looked at Lucas' heart seriously as she spoke. I appreciate the compliment, but that's not what I came here to talk about today." Lucas' heart let out a couple of awkward coughs. She was a year ahead of Lucas' heart in school. Just like Lucas' heart once dreamed of becoming a manga artist, Rachel Ruan had the same dream. But the path she took was a bit different. While Lucas' heart kept submitting his work and getting rejected, Rachel Ruan started making doujinshi instead. That line of work at least kept her financially stable, and as she put it, becoming a popular doujinshi artist first, then switching over to professional manga later, was also a legit path to success. As for the kind of doujinshi, of course they were mostly romantic and sweet love stories, though not always that sweet. As his senior, Rachel Ruan thought Lucas' heart had real talent and had always wanted to pull him into her team. Sensing the conversation was starting to drift, probably toward that topic again, Lucas' heart quickly brought up the real reason he came to see her today. Switching to game development. When she heard that, Rachel Ruan's eyes widened like she'd just heard something totally unbelievable. "My original goal was just to share my stories with others, whether it's through manga or games. They're both just different ways to do that," Lucas' heart explained, sharing the reason he'd thought through ahead of time. "And besides, there are plenty of people in the industry who have gone from manga artists or novelists to directors or game designers, right?" Lucas' heart added with a smile. Unlike his previous life, thanks to how far technology had come, the barrier to entry in a lot of fields had dropped quite a bit. So in this world, people crossing over into other creative industries wasn't all that rare. Of course, being successful after switching fields, that's another story entirely. "That's not the point," Rachel Ruan rolled her eyes. "No meals, no place to stay, and even the illustration fees might be delayed. Lucas' heart, are you just trying to get free labor out of me?" If it weren't for the fact that he was her junior, and that she still wanted to pull him into her team, Rachel Ruan would have left right then and there, because honestly, it all sounded like a scam. Greedy capitalists trying to exploit her labor. Wait, no, even capitalists wouldn't go this far. Chapter 4: A Helping Hand. Hearing what Rachel Ruan said, Lucas' heart's face flushed red. But just a moment later, he pulled himself together, cleared his throat to break the awkwardness, and started thinking of a good excuse. "Well, you see, there are a lot of reasons for that." Across the table, Rachel Ruan gave him a sideways glance. "Men and their lies, But if those are your conditions, I can accept them. Still, I have one request of my own." Rachel Ruan looked at Lucas' heart with a bright smile. Lucas' heart was caught off guard when he heard that. He had been racking his brain, trying to figure out how to convince her. When he first approached her, Lucas' heart honestly hadn't had much confidence. It was more of a shot in the dark. He knew his own situation well, offering money. There was no way, if he had money, they wouldn't even be talking, he'd just go ahead with making the game. After all, there were still essential things he needed to buy. Count on the senior-junior relationship. But she didn't owe him anything, and she had no reason to help. Plus, the whole thing probably sounded like empty promises. But now, is there hope? What are your conditions, senpai? Lucas Hart asked Rachel Ruan. You've got 1 month, and if your game doesn't sell well, then you'll have to come work for me. At least 2 contracts need to be signed. Of course, I won't treat you the way you were planning to take advantage of my work for free. Rachel Ruan said with a smile. Hearing her words, Lucas Hart was stunned for a moment, before snapping back to his senses. As for Doujin Works, Lucas Hart didn't really have much of an opinion. After all, in his previous life, there were already plenty of female artists doing those kinds of illustrations. Like Yuzuki and Dash or Nishizawa 5M. Actually, Lucas Hart didn't know a single one of those artists or their work, only heard about them from friends. So what kind of sales number would count as not good? Lucas Hart asked Rachel Ruan after collecting his thoughts. If she was talking about needing to sell a few million copies, then he really wouldn't feel very confident. This was, after all, a parallel world. The game industry here was very different from the one in his past life. Even without the issue of piracy, the market itself had a different shape. Without any capital for marketing and promotion, relying solely on word of mouth from players would be really tough. Even in his previous life, those hugely successful indie games that sold millions, sometimes tens of millions, of copies. If you looked closely, most of them only blew up half a year or a year after release. At first, they were completely unknown. Even big titles like The Binding of Isaac started out in obscurity. Good stuff can still get buried if no one hears about it. So if Rachel Ruan were to say something like 1 million copies, then Lucas Hart figured he'd be better off just going solo. Because if he agreed to that and failed, with the game he was planning now, he'd definitely end up as just a hired artist for Doujin Works. 100,000, let's say 50,000 then. If you don't break 50,000 sales in the first month, you lose. Rachel Ruan pulled out her phone and seemed to be typing something. About a minute later, she looked up and said the number. Hearing that, Lucas Hart couldn't help but show a confident smile. 50,000 sales in 1 month. Even though this world's game industry was different from what he knew, and he didn't have much startup money right now. That number, Lucas Hart thought it was basically a free win. No problem, Lucas Hart agreed without hesitation. Then let's officially start tomorrow, senpai. I'll head back now to prepare. See you in the morning. With that, he gave her a quick farewell and didn't give her a chance to react. Lucas Hart turned and left the cafe just like that, leaving behind a slightly dazed Rachel Ruan. Did I maybe aim too low? Thinking that, Rachel Ruan quickly opened her contacts and dialed a number. 2 seconds later, someone picked up. Anna, you weren't messing with me just now, right? Is 50,000 sales in a month actually considered a high number? Rachel Ruan asked, still thinking about Lucas Hart's confident reaction earlier. A clear female voice came through the phone. It's not high, relatively speaking. Didn't you ask how many sales would be considered? A lot, for someone making a game for the first time with barely any money. No budget, first-time developer, barely any usable game engine resources. That's basically nightmare mode. Getting to 50,000 sales would be S-rank difficulty. If you hit a few thousand in the first month, that's already considered passing. Really? Rachel Ruan was still a bit skeptical. Of course it's true. That's a judgment from someone who works in the industry. By the way, Rachel, are you really planning to make a game now? You've finally made up your mind. I told you. You come help me with concept art and character illustrations, and we'll make something big out of it. The person on the other end of the phone, Anna Young, sounded very excited. Anna Young, I can't hear you clearly. The signal's bad here. Let's talk later, okay? Hearing the excitement in Anna's voice, Rachel's expression shifted slightly. She held the phone a bit farther away, said a few words, then hung up and let out a deep breath. Thinking about what Anna had said, Rachel couldn't help but smile. First time making a game, no money, hell-level difficulty. Lucas had basically checked every box. So the assistant problem was finally solved. The only downside was that this assistant, wouldn't be able to officially start for another 2 months. After saying goodbye to Rachel Ryuan, Lucas Hart returned to his apartment. He quickly tidied up the room, then sat down at his desk and looked at his laptop. As a dev machine, the laptop's specs were just average, but it was enough to handle a project like Mirror. Of course, bigger games were completely out of the question for Lucas right now. Because he had no money and didn't have full access to the official engine's resources. As for gaining access to more resources, there were basically 2 ways to go about it. The first was becoming a certified game designer and leveling up your title. How do you level up? Game sales awards, those are things that count. The second way was much simpler, just pay for it. How many resources you can use depends on how much money you've got. But for now, none of that mattered to Lucas Hart. Besides, Mirror didn't really need that many resources anyway. At least for now, Lucas Hart had more than enough to work with. Sitting in front of the computer, he started working on the initial draft of Mirror, the game design document. Even though he was the only developer, and Rachel Ryuan was just handling the illustrations, that didn't mean he could skip the concept drafts. Just like writing an outline before an essay, it would help him work much more efficiently. Chapter 5, I can't believe you're making that kind of game. Mirror could be described as a very unique mini-game. It combined match-3 mechanics with RPG elements and threw in multiple endings like a gal game. The overall gameplay actually looked pretty solid. As for the match-3 gameplay, it was basically an evolved form of tile matching, which already existed in this world. It was fairly popular too, so Lucas Hart wasn't too worried about whether players would accept it. Besides, the main selling point of Mirror wasn't the match-3 gameplay. It was the story and CG illustrations. And Lucas had no worries about those, because the Rachel Ryuan in his memory was more than capable. And so was he. He quickly finished writing some of the JDD game design document, settings. Match-3 gameplay, different upgrade paths. After that, Lucas Hart started writing the story. The first story featured a female dark elf thief sneaking into a lord's vault to steal gold for the poor, only to discover the lord's secret identity was a demon, and she ended up in his clutches. From there, players would have 2 choices, go the true love route or the Netorea route. The second story was about a female general who time-traveled from ancient times to the modern world. She ran into a modern-day otaku and, because of the time travel, had become physically weak and helpless. The story branches into 2 different endings. One is a sweet, happy ending for the pure love warrior, which of course feels very natural. The other one is a bit darker, but the journey is touching. In modern times, an otaku mistreats a female general. Then the 2 of them end up traveling back to ancient times. After spending time together, just as the war is about to be lost, the otaku has the chance to return to the modern world, but chooses to stay and die with her instead. As for what comes next, there are also stories involving zombies tied to reincarnation and fate, and a tale about a dragon knight. At this point, Lucas only plans to develop these 4 stories. The reason is simple, he's running out of money. After all, making a match-3 game, hiring a voice actress later, and buying BGM licenses all cost money. As for where the money will come from, it's not too big of a problem. That bit of savings, just over 10,000, is obviously not enough, but using credit cards should get him through. So, the next morning, in Lucas Hart's apartment, Ryuan Ningxu sat beside him with her drawing tablet and laptop, staring at the rough story summary and storyboard he had sketched out, looking puzzled. I didn't expect this kind of game from you, Lucas Hart. I knew it. Being a manga artist or game designer isn't your true talent. Come draw doujin with me. With your skills and my skills, I'm sure we can make it. Start as doujin artists, grow a fan base, and then break into the mainstream. A lot of famous artists started this way. Looking at the material Lucas had stayed up all night to prepare, Rachel eagerly laid out her strategic plan. What a waste! How could someone with this much talent be making games? Her own biggest weakness was in storytelling. That's why she decided to make doujin books to support herself, while slowly getting better. But now, after reading Lucas's short stories, she was blown away. Pure love, NTR, reincarnation, it had everything. Hearing her excitement, Lucas twitched slightly at the corner of his mouth. Thanks for the praise, but I'll pass, he said politely. Well then, for now, just start drawing the illustrations in order. Unlike manga, all of these need to be fully colored and more detailed. As for the story itself, there's no need to show it through the art. The plot will mainly be told through dialogue, Lucas Hart explained. I got it, so I just need to focus on making the art more polished and show off the charm of the female characters, like making every piece look like the cover of a doujin book. I'm good at that, no worries, Rachel replied enthusiastically. Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. Lucas Hart nodded, then took a deep breath. If everything's ready, let's get started today. Rachel smiled, gave a thumbs up, and opened the necessary software. The development of Mirror was going much smoother than Lucas Hart expected. Most of the minor art assets were outsourced. The 4 initial characters were set: a dark-skinned elf, a dragon girl, a female general, and a cute zombie girl. As for music, Lucas Hart composed it himself, technically. But it would take too much time and energy, and he didn't have the budget. Buying a license was quicker and easier. That just left voice acting. Music and BGM could be passable, even if not perfect. But character art and voice acting, those were non-negotiable. Those were the 2 key pillars of Mirror. Perfect, but it still needs a bit of touch-up. Looking at the freshly colored illustration Ryuan Ningxu had just finished, Lucas Hart couldn't help but be impressed. In his past life, he wasn't exactly a nobody in the game industry. He had even met and talked with some of the top people in the field at various summits. When it came to art, he had some solid knowledge. In his past life, he had studied the work of top concept artists in the industry. People like Yang Kai, who worked on Black Myth, Wukong, Shigenori Sojima from the Persona series, and Tetsuya Nomura. Lucas had done deep research on their design styles in his previous life. But when it came to characters, Rachel Ryuan really surprised him. She was way more talented than he expected. Of course, she wasn't perfect. After all, game art and manga are 2 very different things. Even when it's just an illustration for a visual novel, it's still quite different from drawing manga. I see, so it's not the same as drawing doujin books, Rachel Ryuan said thoughtfully after listening to Lucas Hart. Yeah, even in visual novel games, the illustrations are nothing like manga, Lucas Hart nodded slightly and said to her. Inside the rented apartment, Lucas Hart and Rachel Ryuan chatted about some of the key points. At this stage, the game was basically finished. The only thing left now was the voice acting. For a Bishoujo game like this, voice acting is one of the most important parts. In fact, it was one of the biggest parts of the budget. But Lucas Hart didn't plan to go full voice acting. That would blow the budget. Just voicing the key lines would be enough. What about the male lead in each story? Should he get voice lines too? No way. Chapter 6, A Judgment from a Pro Game Developer. Days passed, one after another. The final CG illustration was done. The voice and subtitle edits were finished. Looking at the compiled game build on his computer, Lucas's face lit up with excitement. It's finally done. So now we look for a publisher, Rachel asked. She was also a little excited. After all, it was a project they had spent the whole month working on together. Well, even if she hadn't been paid a single cent by Lucas Hart. No, Lucas Hart gently shook his head at her question. Rachel Ryuan looked surprised. She didn't know much about games, but she at least knew Lucas Hart was considered an indie game developer now. Just like how manga artists or filmmakers need to find a publisher or distributor, right? Games are a bit different, and we're not targeting local platforms, we're aiming for overseas official platforms. Though domestic players can also access it directly. There's no choice really. Just like selling doujin books, most of the traffic comes from overseas platforms. Mirror is 100% an R18 game, and this type of content is in a pretty awkward spot, Lucas Hart explained to her. Then why are you even making this type of game? Rachel Ryuan asked, confused. From the way he described it, it sounded like the game might get shut down before it even launched. Even if that really happened, it would mean that Lucas could be her assistant from now on. But to be honest, Rachel's thoughts were a bit different now, after spending a month working with Lucas Hart. She had a much better impression of him, and she also gained a simple understanding of the gaming industry. It actually seemed kind of interesting. Plus, she had put some of her own effort into this project. To be honest, she really hoped it would succeed. One step at a time. I'm well prepared for the next stage of Mirror. Just wait for the good news, senpai. When the time comes, I'll definitely give you a big red envelope. Lucas Hart smiled. All right, I'll be waiting then. Rachel looked at Lucas, who was full of confidence. Even though she was still a bit puzzled, she nodded along. Somewhere in a residential area in Magic City, a woman in a white shirt and jeans was leaning against the wall inside Rachel Ruan's home. Rachel, are you really not thinking about helping me? With your art and my game design skills, we could definitely make a name for ourselves in the gaming world. Looking at the excited Anna in front of her, Rachel put her juice on the coffee table. For a moment, she felt like she could understand how Lucas Hart must have felt. Anna, not to be mean, but haven't you already made 3 games? And weren't all of them a loss? Rachel Ruan rolled her eyes. She didn't know much about games before, but after a month working with Lucas Hart, even though for her, the job wasn't that different from drawing comics, she was still just drawing. Still, she learned a bit about games, and then she realized that Anna, who used to brag so much to her, had actually made 3 games and not a single one broke even. The next one will definitely sell big, as long as you help me, Anna said confidently. Yeah, right, didn't Uncle say that once the startup money runs out, he won't invest anymore? So Anna, what's your plan then? Rachel, sitting on the sofa, looked doubtful as she glanced at Anna Young's confident face. Ahem, by the way, Rachel, how's that game your junior is working on? Has he found a publisher yet? Do you want me to introduce one? Anna cleared her throat and quickly changed the subject. No need for that. Lucas said he's going to upload it directly to the official platform, without using a publisher. Rachel shook her head, thinking back to what Lucas had told her. No publisher, that's a big disadvantage. Without the promotion from a third-party platform, you're basically relying on the official platform to recommend your game as a new release. Unless the quality is amazing, it's really hard to stand out, Anna said with the tone of someone who'd been through it. Well, Anna, Lucas said the game won't be on the new game list, and he's uploading it to an overseas platform. Rachel recalled their talk from the day before. No new game listing, overseas platform. Is it an 18-plus game? No wonder he came to you, Rachel, but your junior is being too naive. A game that only sells with sex appeal is really hard to make successful. Anna, who had a decent understanding of the game industry, immediately figured out the type of game from Rachel Ruan's words. Even for games with blood and violence, as long as it's not over the top, they can still make it onto the official new game list. But if it's not launching on a domestic platform, and it's going overseas without a new game listing. Games like that are almost always 18-plus adult games. Seriously, Lucas should have his own plan right, and Mirror isn't just a plain adult-only game, it actually has a pretty rich story too, Rachel said, thinking back to how confident Lucas Hart looked. She sounded a bit unsure. Don't I know that already? You said that junior of yours is just as good at art as you are, right? He's clearly counting on the artwork to be the main selling point, but a game isn't going to succeed on art alone. And as for the content, what kind of deep story can an adult game even have? That's the opinion of a professional game developer, and since it's not going into any big game stores with no third-party publisher, unless he pours money into advertising, this game probably won't even make a splash, Anna declared boldly. So Anna, do you think that game will sell over 50,000 copies? Rachel asked, looking at the confident Anna Young. No way. Even though she hadn't actually seen the game Rachel worked on yet. Still, Anna gave her verdict without hesitation. Based on what she knew, it was a low-budget indie game with no publisher, adult-only content, just 2 people working on it, and the guy used to draw manga and only did some outsourced work for games. Sure, adult games always have some kind of audience. Let's be real, who isn't a little pervy? But the competition in this kind of game is huge. With that kind of setup, how could the game possibly succeed? You have to understand, she's already made 3 failed games herself, so she knows just how hard this industry really is. 50,000 is out of the question, but adult games usually sell cheap, and with your art skills, Rachel, if the quality's not bad, it might sell 10,000 copies, at least you won't lose money. From a risk perspective, adult games are actually kind of safer, Anna added, trying to comfort Rachel Ruan a little. This is coming from a professional game developer, she repeated, just to reinforce her point. I see, Rachel, still only half familiar with the game industry, looked a little worried. Chapter 7, the story behind it warms the heart. Inside Lucas's small rental apartment, he was eating a bowl of instant noodles he had just made. He even added an egg to it. That was basically all he could afford to eat lately. He was completely broke. He had credit card debt, outstanding loans on online pay later. Not only that, but Rachel hadn't paid him yet for his illustration work. On top of that, she borrowed another $100 from him. Most of his money had been poured into the game project. He couldn't even afford proper meals anymore. Of course, that's also because he had specifically set aside $2,000. That $2,000 was the key to getting Mirror off the ground. Lucas had full confidence in the quality of Mirror, especially after he really got into the world of adult games, and yeah, even those infamous doujinshi. To Lucas, most of them were just crap. Why should adult games not be treated like real games? It was ridiculous. But like the old saying goes, even the best wine needs good marketing, or no one will know it exists. If you think just putting an adult game on a platform is enough to make it go viral, you're dreaming. Even masterpieces like Minecraft or The Binding of Isaac, if dumped on a platform without a plan, could easily go unnoticed at first. So if you want a game to succeed, marketing is a must. Even if it's just an adult game. And the way you do that, well, it has to be a little out of the ordinary. So, inside a university dorm room, Jason climbed down the ladder from his top bunk, yawning, and turned on the laptop sitting on his desk. Nothing new to read lately, he mumbled. As he spoke, he opened a well-known overseas forum. Of course, by books, he didn't just mean erotic material, he also meant doujinshi, fan-made comics. For example, in some stories, the plot can be frustrating. Maybe a popular side female character dies, or the female lead in a shounen manga is killed off to trigger the male lead's transformation. Stuff like that just makes you feel like crap, but if the art and story are really good, it makes it even more annoying. That's where doujinshi comes in. And yeah, sometimes people read the more explicit ones with a critical eye too, that's pretty common. But usually these doujinshi are made just for fun, especially with all the copyright stuff involved. There are also original works, but those tend to be the more adult kinds. Jason had just logged into one of the more popular overseas forums to see if there was anything new. After all, a lot of artists who make this kind of content are doing it just for fun. It's normal for them to be inconsistent, 3 days of effort, 2 days off. Forget full volumes, sometimes you're lucky to get 1 chapter a week. Even the paid adult original works don't always update regularly. But today, something seemed off when Jiang Ping opened the forum. Right on the homepage were a bunch of strange-looking posts. Roommate's bed shaking like crazy in the middle of the night, twisted human nature, or moral collapse. This is hands down the most fun match 3 game I've ever played. A match 3 game that seems simple on the surface, but hides a surprisingly heartwarming story. What kind of game is this? My little brother's completely drained after playing it. I just wanted to buy him a harmless match 3 game. Go brave cow, don't fear the struggle, bros, let's go. Same. What the hell? Jason stared at the list of post titles in total confusion. He clicked into one of the threads and spent a while reading before he finally figured it out. So the heartwarming story and the bed-shaking stuff, they were all code. These guys were actually talking about their favorite adult games. Fine, call it what it is, a gentleman's game, but what the hell were those comments? After playing for half an hour, I felt just like the title said, we're all people behind the mirror. Once the mirror is gone, all that's left is the pain and suffering of reality. The more beauty you see, the more hope you feel for life. When you're covered in scars, maybe it's okay to take a break and quietly remember that simple, pure, slightly sad feeling again. The way it reveals the dark side of human nature is way beyond what I expected. It's about redemption and falling into darkness. The questions it raises about morality hit deep. Even after closing the game, my mind stayed in that world. Strongly recommended. A deeply emotional game. beneath its shameless surface lies a haunting sense of sadness. It may seem like random chatter among common folks, but what it says is more meaningful than half the scriptures in a temple. Each story in the game has its own color, but together they shine like a tiny version of the real world. Of course, the game has its flaws, but the story is top tier, simple, powerful, and unforgettable. Mirror reminded me of Dream of the Red Chamber. Through the mirror, you see the fate of different women. Each of them lives under different circumstances, ruled by things like desire, love, or fear. What players feel in their hearts after watching, maybe just a sigh after closing the game, or maybe nothing at all. A great writer once said, "Some people go for smut where they shouldn't, but others look for meaning where smut is expected." Talking about life, morality, Magic Mirror is exactly that kind of game, covered in sleaze but actually thoughtful. When an adult game manages to move me, I realize whether I go for it or not doesn't even matter anymore. The moment I launched this game, in just 10 minutes, I was hit by something I can't put into words. It was like a guiding light in the dark. I have a feeling this game is going to bring change to the whole gentleman game world. What the hell is this? What the heck are you guys even talking about? After reading the whole thread, Jason felt completely stunned, and at the same time, extremely curious. Looking through all the posts and comments in the forum, once he confirmed that the game was called Mirror, he opened the official game platform and searched for it. Right on the game's cover was a very eye-catching elf, along with a big red 18+ label. Yup, this was clearly a game for adults, no doubt about it. But judging by those comments, were people even talking about the right game? Jason had already been pretty interested in adult games to begin with, and now this one had really caught his eye. What kind of game was this exactly? The price was only $10, not expensive at all. About the same as breakfast. Without thinking much, Jason added the game to his cart and paid for it with a quick scan. Now he really wanted to see what made this cute anime-style match 3 game so special. Chapter 8, the philosophy mode, begins. This UI actually looks pretty nice. As soon as he entered the game, Jason was surprised by how good the user interface looked. Even though Jason was a bit of an amateur when it came to LSB games, he'd played a few before. He wasn't an expert, but he had some basic experience with this kind of game. And while lots of adult games were made using official engines, most of the ones he'd played had terrible, messy UIs. But this game Mirror, at least when it came to UI, was actually really well done. I can only pick one character. After clicking to start, Jason saw a diamond-shaped menu in the middle of the screen. There were several characters inside it, but only one of them, a dark-skinned elf, was unlocked. The rest were locked. So many characters to pick from, that's actually kind of impressive. Jason looked surprised. And honestly, he felt a little excited, too. Instinctively, he glanced at the dorm door. Still closed, his roommates were all out today. He walked to the door, shut it properly, and locked it just to be safe. Then he sat back down in front of the computer. Staring at the game screen, he took a deep breath, and his face took on a serious look. But in his head, he was thinking something else entirely. Starting off with a dark-skinned elf, that's pretty intense. Feeling a little thrill, Jason followed the tutorial and clicked on a battle-looking icon. On this quiet night in a dark castle cut off from the world, an unexpected guest appeared. A shadow, barely visible at first, slowly began to take shape. Looking at the game screen and the choices that followed, Jason paused for a moment. Wasn't this supposed to be a gentleman's game? Why did it feel more like a visual novel? There's a story, too. Jason scratched his head but didn't think too much about it. He just clicked around a few times. When the game suddenly entered a battle scene, Jason was surprised again. Wait, is this actually a match 3 game? He remembered seeing posts on a forum where people said this was the best match 3 game out there. Jason thought they were just joking. But now it turns out, this really is a match 3 game. Orange balls boost physical attacks. The sword icon means physical, the star is magic, and the potion heals you. Matching 4 creates a stronger ball, and 5 makes a magic diamond that does massive damage. There are also items and special skills, though right now I only have one that heals. Thanks to the beginner guide, Jason quickly got the hang of the combat system. And then he was a little shocked. Wait, is he playing a gentleman's game or a full-on match 3 game? Why is there so much going on? Jason looked amazed. The gentleman games he'd played before never had this much to them. Most of them were just click-throughs with character art popping up. And some were so low effort it was just lazy. But this one, manhwa, felt different. This combat system was way too deep. Well, for a gentleman's game, anyway. And there's actually a story, too. Plus, the LSB elements were something, and there was a lot of them. Jason pursed his lips, squinted a little, and leaned in toward the screen. He turned off the small speaker on the desk. Then he pulled an earbud from his drawer, plugged it in, and put it in one ear. After matching some tiles and launching an attack, even the dark-skinned elf had her own sound effects. And once her HP dropped low enough, her outfit... Ah, that's right. Based on the story, this was set in medieval times, wasn't it? No wonder the clothes were so worn out. People back then had it rough. Just look at how torn her clothes are, and how tanned her skin is. Matching 5 tiles even gives you a diamond, and it deals crazy damage. You can also use special skills and buy items to help out in battle. There's even a turn limit, only 13 turns left, and this elf still has tons of health. After just a short play session, Jason's focus shifted from the elf's outfit to the match 3 gameplay. He had to admit, this match 3 system was actually really fun. So, the quality here is off the charts. After 2 straight battles, the game entered play mode. Jason felt like all the adult games he'd played before were a waste of time. What's a real adult game? This is what an adult game should be. Those old ones, what were they even? Just the adult content with no real gameplay. Of course, even then, that was still acceptable, if the content was practical enough to make up for the lack of gameplay. But some of them were just downright sloppy, like they thought a gentleman's money didn't matter. Now look at this game, manhwa. Not only is it super useful, but it also has rich and detailed gameplay. This is what a real adult game should be like. And it even has gal game elements. And 2 different endings. Jason, who had just gotten the pure love ending on his first playthrough, was thinking back on the different choices he'd made. Then he noticed the dark elf character only showed 50% completion. He was visibly thrilled. He never expected that while looking for certain kinds of materials, he'd end up stumbling across a god-tier game instead. All right, I won't play the new character just yet. Let's check out the other ending first. If we're following normal game logic, this second ending should be where the dark elf turns evil, right? With curiosity and a little excitement and nervousness, Jason clicked back in. So, 10 minutes later. Why did it turn out like this? In front of his computer, Jason was feeling both hyped up and deeply moved. She was born a noble but cared about the poor. She even resorted to stealing just to help them. But those same poor people she helped turned out to be disgusting, shameless, and completely ungrateful. And when the dark elf was captured by demons, all the peasants could think about was their twisted desires. Even though the art in the game was just as intense as before, and the voice acting was way better than other adult games, Jason still felt a mess of emotions inside. Especially when a young guard came in later, someone who still had a bit of kindness in his heart. Yet in the end, even he gave in to temptation and did something terrible. It felt like the final straw that broke the camel's back. And then the demon's sinister grin from outside, the wall just sealed the feeling. Jason was really shaken. Maybe now he understood why those well-known gentlemen on the forums had such strange reactions to this game. Because this wasn't just another adult game. It was a deep dive into human nature, a serious look at good and evil. Suddenly, Jason found himself having a bit of a philosophical moment. Are people naturally good? Or are they naturally bad? Why did those people turn on the elf who helped them? Why did someone who still had kindness in his heart end up giving in to evil in the end? Jason, now in full-on philosophy mode, was deep in thought. And this was only the beginning. Chapter 9, Woman, Go Away. Don't bother me while I'm playing match 3 games. Next story. A young lady from the Warring States era. Her duty was to protect her clan from destruction. One day, she discovered a magical bronze mirror that transporting her to a strange new world. Here there was no war, everyone could live freely and happily. She was dazzled by the bustling sights and before she realized it, met him, a shut-in who wasn't totally useless. Their first meeting was a mess, they even got into a fight. She lost, and by the rules of her world, that meant he was now her husband. When she was hungry, the shut-in took her out for a meal. A pork cutlet bowl, she was shocked. So much meat, it must cost a lot, right? Because in her world, ordinary people couldn't afford meat. She also tried a drink called beer for the first time. "What is this? It's so good," she said, drunk and hugging the bottle, grinning. It might have been the most relaxed she'd ever felt. When the hangover wore off, she woke up and picked up the bronze mirror that brought her here. She took the shut-in back with her to her own world. But that didn't really change much. In her world, everything was still the same. The Ketsuno clan was still on the verge of collapse, surrounded by dangerous enemies. The only thing that changed was the new husband, who didn't look very strong. He became the captain of her personal guard, but that was about it. Even with him around, the fall of the Ketsuno clan couldn't be stopped. 2 months later, she sat on the city wall, covered in blood. The endless war had turned the land red. Outside the city, the dead were piled like mountains. The sound of battle shook the sky. They were the enemies about to break through. Staring at the army outside, she knew she had failed to protect the Ketsuno clan in the chaos of this world. So this is how the Ketsuno clan's 300 years of honor ends. The shut-in kept begging her to escape, but she only shook her head gently. "Makoto, you and I are different. From the day my father put this armor on me, I swore I'd protect the Ketsuno clan's honor with my life." Makoto tried reasoning with her, listing examples and historical patterns. Empires rise and fall, your clan isn't the only one to be destroyed. "Makoto, you don't understand. Our clan's dreams and sacrifices live on in this land. Take this bronze mirror and go." She told him everything. After hearing it, he begged her even more to come with him. But she had her beliefs, there was no way she'd agree. If she were the kind of person who could throw all that away, she wouldn't have come back in the first place. She closed her eyes. The sound of his voice was gone, only the noise of the enemy about to storm the city remained. "Makoto, are you gone? You really left, huh? Honestly, I really wanted to leave with you. I wanted to drink beer with you again, that beer was so good, really so good." Tears spilled from the corners of her eyes. The memories came rushing back. Her character art holding a beer mug appeared in the center of the screen. "Husband, this wine is so good. How about another 2 glasses? Look, I already drank all of mine. You should have some too, come on, cheers." In that hazy moment, she thought she faintly heard his voice. "Kill, I am the captain of Anna Yano's royal guard. Anyone in my way will be killed." Staring at the game that had returned to the main menu, Jason sniffled and closed his slightly sore eyes. It took him a while before he opened them again. This game is insane. This game is totally crazy. Why does a lewd game need such amazing art? The voice acting is great, and even the match 3 combat system is top tier. Isn't that expensive? I just wanted to play a lewd game. Why did you have to make it so emotional? Even while complaining out loud, Jason didn't hesitate at all. No, he wasn't grabbing tissues. He had exited to the main menu and immediately went to the store to leave a 5-star review. Even though the refund period hadn't passed yet, once you leave a review, you can't refund the game. But that didn't matter at all. He didn't need to say anything else about what came after. Just from what he'd already seen, Jason felt the game was totally worth it. In fact, he thought the creator was dumb for only selling it for $10. And it wasn't just Jason. On a small overseas forum, a bunch of LSB players, lewd game fans, discovered the game and checked it out of curiosity. When they exited the game, all of them were deeply moved. Some were drawn in by the story. The tale of the elf and the demon, made them think about the good and evil in human nature. Humans chose to fall, while a non-human elf tried to help them, only to be betrayed in the end. The story of the shut-in and the female general brought tears to their eyes. He seemed like a useless guy, but when he finally had the chance to leave, he showed a kind of bravery and responsibility most people could never imagine. The story of the dragon maid and the knight was a long, strange, and beautiful journey. Praised like ancient kings, who could match them? Because of them, evil monsters dared not threaten the land. Because of them, greedy rulers didn't dare oppress the people. The story of Kaeyun and Kiwoon made many LSBs cry. 200 years of waiting, 200 years of rebirth. Their story should have ended 200 years ago. It's supposed to be a game LSBs love the most. So why does it feel so heavy, so sad after playing? Now these players finally understood what those earlier forum posts were talking about. In that moment they could really feel it too. Of course, there were still a lot of impatient lewd gamers who weren't good at match 3 and got stuck right at the start. Kaeyun, please stop sucking my blood. Let me in, I'm your senior brother Kiwoon, let me see you. Those players started studying the match 3 system carefully, grinding for points and money to buy upgrades and items. Eventually they evolved. They stopped caring about the lewd parts of the game and became obsessed with the match 3 gameplay instead. Simple and easy to pick up, yet full of fun. For a lewd game, this was almost unbelievable. Except the girl on the side was getting kind of annoying. She was blocking the match 3 screen. Woman, move, get out of the way, don't mess up my match 3 combos. This time, with my brainpower, I'll definitely beat my high score. Chapter 10, Who could say no to a cute girl puzzle game? Phew, that was unexpected. Inside the small apartment, Lucas looked at the sales numbers on the back end of the official platform and was a little surprised. The growth in numbers was far beyond what he had expected. On the first day, he sold 162 copies. Not a high number, but not bad either. But on the second day, sales shot up to around 610 copies, nearly 4 times more. The main reason, his marketing strategy. With only a $2,000 budget, normal ads weren't really an option. Not just because of the lack of money, but also because the game had a special kind of content. So Lucas Hart decided to target an overseas forum that many gentlemen frequent. After all, what he really needed was exposure. And his method, the classic elite shill post strategy. He never planned on doing wide-scale spam campaigns. They're usually not very effective and can even backfire. Instead, Lucas went with a more focused plan, buying old, reputable accounts and using them to post review-style threads. After posting, he had some backup accounts on other platforms help push the threads up with replies. Of course, the most important part of this plan was still the quality of the game. Without a solid product, this kind of promotion wouldn't work at all, might even be worse than mass spamming. The real key was turning curious players into loyal fans, who would then recommend the game to their friends and fellow gentlemen. As someone who used to be a professional game planner in his past life, and also a loyal, honest gamer, Lucas Hart knew one thing very well. What are players really interested in? It's a pretty simple idea. Most players love doing the opposite of what's expected. In a normal game, they love sneaking in naughty stuff. In a naughty game, they enjoy doing normal things. That kind of contrast is exactly what hooks them. Just like that popular joke online, men have 2 main hobbies, dragging good girls into the dark and convincing bad girls to be good. Gamers are the same. There are always players who love pulling off weird and creative stuff in games. Of course, that alone isn't enough to make a game succeed. In the end, it still comes down to quality. But if that contrast can catch players' attention and pull them in, then it's already doing its job. And judging by Mira's sales, this marketing plan is definitely working. Lucas didn't pick Mira on a whim, it was a well-thought-out choice. He had already researched how similar games were doing on the market, whether modern players still liked the same kind of content as in his past life, and whether the platforms and promotion methods were realistic. He planned for everything. With all that, the success of Mirror was already well within Lucas's control. The only thing he didn't expect was just how passionate the gentlemen were. Selling 610 copies on the second day, Lucas believed that was just the beginning. As time went on and more players started spreading the word, Mirror's sales would only keep rising. Yeah, at this rate, I can pay off the debt on the payment app by next week. Good thing the overseas platform pays out in real time. Once the refund period ends, the money gets sent straight to my account. But just like in my past life, the cut that third-party platforms take is really hard to swallow. Thinking of that, Lucas' heart smacked his lips. The official game platform takes a 30% cut, mostly to cover platform maintenance, engine updates, and development of new tech. As for the other third-party platforms, they're way worse. Especially on mobile platforms, where the cut usually starts at 50%. Some even go as far as a 70-30 split, and of course, that's 70 for the platform, 30 for the developer. That's pretty much the same as the big companies and app stores from his past life. But to be fair, there are some benefits, like the huge user base on those third-party platforms. Also, official platforms don't promote much, and their recommendation systems aren't that smart. So even though those platforms take a big cut, studios and companies can still make money. It's just that all the meat gets eaten by the platforms, and the devs are left drinking soup. But for Lucas right now, he just looked into those platforms a little. They didn't seem very useful. It's not that he thought they were too greedy and didn't want to use them. In fact, if he really used them, it would definitely help bring in money faster at the start. The main problem was that Mirror was a bit of a special case. Even if it got on those platforms, it wouldn't get any real promotion spots. So, from the afternoon into the evening, Lucas kept an eye on the game's sales numbers. This time period was the peak for new sales. Every hour he refreshed the backend and watched the numbers go up. From around 100 new copies sold per hour earlier, the number climbed to over 200 during this peak time. Clearly, word about Mirror was slowly spreading through all kinds of gentlemen's circles. Every bit of sales growth came from these friendly gentlemen supporting the game. And once player reviews were unlocked, the rating for Mirror was finally revealed. 9.7, a score that could only be called explosive. But Lucas' heart wasn't overly excited. The main reason was simple. As an 18-plus game, players tend to be much more forgiving and accepting. Compared to regular games, this score didn't mean all that much. Just like how some forums are full of fighting and negativity, the forums where these gentlemen hang out are totally different. There the comments are super friendly, either thanking the original poster or sharing viewing tips and praising certain teachers. The only thing Mirror's rating really proved was that, in the eyes of the players, this was a game worth buying and recommending. After all, who could say no to a fun, cute girl match 3 game? Chapter 11, who could relate to someone like that? A neighborhood somewhere in Shanghai. Rachel, are you really not thinking about making games with me? Anna sat on the couch with her legs resting on the coffee table in front of her, talking to Rachel Ruan, who was sitting nearby coloring a sketch. Anna, your little boat is full of holes and about to sink, Rachel Ruan said, putting down her pen and rolling her eyes. Ahem, it's just a rough patch. Besides, I still have 3 employees. And look at your studio, Rachel, how can you even call it a studio? Have you ever seen a one-person studio before? Anna Young quickly fired back. Well, at least I'm making money. And didn't you have 8 employees 3 months ago? Rachel Ruan suddenly realized something and pointed it out. People have their own goals. I can't stop them from chasing their dreams, can I? Anyway, how's that game your junior is making? Anna said awkwardly, trying to change the subject. I haven't really checked. Maybe it's not doing that well, Rachel Ruan replied, shaking her head slightly. So your studio is about to have 2 people now, Anna said with interest, clearly aware of the deal between the 2 of them. Maybe, but I'm guessing Lucas is not in the best mood right now, Rachel sighed. During this time, she hadn't reached out to Lucas. After all, once it ended, she had checked in with Anna, but Anna didn't seem to think much of it. Even though her friend had already burned through nearly all her funds, making 3 games in a row. Still, she was a professional in the gaming industry. And having made 3 games, even if they failed, that still meant she had some experience, right? While working with Lucas for that month, Rachel could really feel his passion for game development. She also felt the unique kind of fun that came from making a game, especially the joy of being hands-on and watching the content move forward bit by bit. That feeling was amazing. And she could finally understand why Lucas Hart had said he wanted to make games. So during this time, she hadn't asked how the game was doing, especially since he had told her he would pay her as soon as the game brought in money. Even though she didn't care much about the money, she also couldn't just tell Lucas to forget it. After all, it wasn't about the money itself, and it wasn't just her problem. Besides, she'd been busy with her own manga work, so she hadn't paid much attention to the game side of things. She figured she'd let Lucas take this time to settle down a bit and talk to him later. She really had worried herself sick for this junior of hers. Anna sighed to herself. Well, this can't be helped. A lot of newbies think adult games are easy, but just because the risk is lower doesn't mean development itself is simple. By the way, Rachel, what's the name of your junior's game? I'll take a look. Anna spoke with the tone of someone who had been through it all, clearly reminded of her own 3 failed attempts. She hadn't met Rachel's junior, but for some reason, Anna felt like she understood how he must be feeling right now. Especially after hearing that he had gone all in and spent everything he had on the game. That made her even more sure this guy must really love making games, just like her. She remembered her own first time putting a game out and the crushing feeling when it failed. In that moment, Anna actually felt a bit of sympathy for Lucas. If her own company weren't already on the verge of cash flow problems, she would have asked Rachel to bring him in. Someone that passionate about games, that's the kind of person she wanted on her team. Don't worry, Rachel. When the time comes, I'll be the cautionary tale for your junior. I'll comfort him by showing him how bad I had it, Anna said, patting Rachel Ruin on the shoulder. 2 people beaten down by the same harsh world. She understood that kind of pain all too well. Thanks, Anna. Oh right, the game is called Mirror, but I think it launched on an overseas platform, Rachel replied. Even though she hadn't asked Lucas directly, she'd quietly checked it out on her own. But at the time, the rating and review info hadn't been unlocked, so she had no idea how it was doing. Mirror, why does that name sound a little familiar? Feels like I've heard it somewhere before. Wait, this game. Muttering to herself after hearing the name from Rachel, Anna opened the official platform and started searching. She didn't know why, but she had this strong feeling that she had seen the game somewhere. She opened the overseas platform, typed in the name, and searched. Then Anna went quiet, turned her head, and stared hard at Rachel. What the hell, Rachel? This is the game you said wasn't doing that well. This is the game made by the junior, who supposedly didn't know what he was doing. Are you kidding me? No wonder the name sounded familiar. She had seen people talking about it on a game forum before. And now, looking at the game's store page again. Rating 9.6. Number of reviews 1,724. Anna couldn't stay calm anymore. Sympathy, empathy. Who the hell could feel empathy for someone like that? Who the hell would feel sorry for someone like that? A 9.6 rating, and just look at how many reviews it already has. It's only been a few days, and there are already over 1,700. She had never felt this way before. So that game by Lucas, it actually did well, Rachel asked Anna. Did well, it's a massive success. And don't forget, it's an 18+ game. And it's only been out a few days, but with this kind of score and this many reviews, I bet the sales will be even better than the highest-selling game I've ever made. Anna looked at Rachel with obvious envy. When she looked at the number of reviews under the game's page, she felt completely crushed. Especially after she had just tried to comfort Rachel by saying she could be used as a cautionary tale. Well, now she really had become the cautionary tale. But she quickly shook off the awkwardness. She stood up and grabbed Rachel's arm. Come on, Rachel, please. You have to introduce me to this genius. I need to learn from him. Like the saying goes, if you're near the water, you'll be the first to see the moon. Sure, it sounds a little weird in this context, but the meaning holds. If you can't be the one others rely on, and you find someone who could be, then why not try to stick close? Chapter 12, Mira's Sale. While Rachel and Anning were having their talk, Lucas was fully focused on how Mira was doing. In fact, quite a few people were already paying attention to the game. Even though it launched on an overseas platform, and it was a pretty unique kind of game. The sales were right there, speaking for themselves. The platform doesn't show exact numbers, but for designers and industry media, it's easy enough to estimate based on available data. The numbers might not be 100% accurate, but they're not too far off either. Even though Mira hadn't topped any best-selling charts, it was holding the #1 spot on the positive review rankings with an almost unbelievable lead. An 18-plus game suddenly reaching the top of the most liked list. That alone shocked a lot of game developers. Everyone was curious, just what kind of magic did this game have? Especially in the comment section. Many people noticed that the reviews were completely different from what you usually see in adult games. Some of them didn't even make sense. Awesome match 3 game. Get out of here, women, don't interrupt my puzzle time. I honestly can't tell if this is a match 3 game or a dating sim, but one thing, for sure, my little bro is very happy. I thought this was just another typical adult game, but I was shocked. This isn't some lazy throwaway project, it's a legit indie gem. As a professional troll, I can only complain about one thing. Why the hell is an adult game this emotional and this well made? 10 minutes past, I already hit post-nut clarity. This game should have ended there, and yet I'm still playing it. These match 3 puzzles are kinda fun, not gonna lie. This game shows the good, bad, beautiful, and ugly sides of human nature. It's like nothing else. When an adult game can actually move me emotionally, does it even matter anymore whether you know or not? I launched this game feeling excited, but when I quit, it wasn't relief, it was this weird emptiness. These reviews left a lot of people stunned. Did they open the wrong game or something? Of course, aside from the many players leaving good reviews, there were also a few who liked to act all serious the moment they were done. Back when he first had only $2,000, Lucas had to rely on posting soft ads on forums popular with foreign adult game fans. Now, it was all word of mouth among those same fans. So for Lucas, all that was left to do was sit back and wait for the money to roll in. All right, now that I've got the first round of funding, the next steps are finding a new workspace and registering a company. And I should also plan out the future more carefully and rack up more points while I'm at it. In his rented apartment, Lucas lay on the bed, going over the next steps in his head. As for the point system, Lucas had noticed something. His points were going up, but still not by much, just enough for 2 single pulls. While he was thinking about that, his phone rang. He glanced over, Rachel was calling. "Hey senpai, what's up?" Lucas picked up. "Nothing big, I just wanted to say congrats. Honestly, I didn't expect this." Rachel sounded a bit embarrassed on the other end. But Lucas pretty much knew what she was trying to say, so he laughed. "It's fine, senpai, totally normal. To be honest, even I was a little surprised by Mira's sales." That was only half true. The part that wasn't true, Mira's success had been fully planned. From the game quality to the marketing strategy, even the choice to make Mira the first release, it was all based on Lucas's research and planning. None of it was random. But the part that was true was how far the game's popularity had gone, that had caught even Lucas off guard. Even though the game was released on a so-called overseas platform, the players were mostly still local. Still, the sales numbers shocked him. It reminded Lucas again just how much bigger and more active the gaming market was in this world compared to his last life. "Oh right, Lucas, are you free tonight? I was thinking we could do a little celebration. Also, I've got a friend who wants to meet you," Rachel said. "No problem, I was actually thinking of treating you to dinner too. If you hadn't helped me out earlier, Mira would have been way harder to finish," Lucas replied sincerely. They chatted for a bit more before ending the call. Lucas set his phone down and checked the back-end data for Mira again. Total sales in 6 days, 58,121 copies. The growth chart looked explosive. Clearly, the fans' enthusiasm was on a whole different level. And judging by Mira's potential, this was just the beginning. Some third-party platforms had only just started listing the game, while Lucas was happily checking the stats. The indie game scene, on the other hand, wasn't so calm. Media outlets who had taken notice started tracking the game's data. After all, it was hard to believe that a game with an 18-plus theme had made it onto the top-rated charts. At the same time, the buzz around Mirror started spreading fast. For everyday players, it was hard to get solid sales numbers. Some media and developers following the game early on figured it might sell 10 or 20,000 copies. But once third-party data trackers published their report, people watching the game were stunned. Because the number they gave was 50,000. That was actually 8,000 less than the real number, but even so, it shocked a lot of game designers. Especially those making similar adult games, they were completely flawed. An adult game selling this many copies, are you kidding? Was that number high? Not really. Big AAA titles can sell millions on day one. Some globally known games even hit 10 million at launch. Of course, it wouldn't be fair to compare Mirror to those kinds of games. For an 18-plus game with no promotion, made by an indie dev, or more accurately, by someone who isn't even a game designer, these numbers are insane. It might have even broken the record for Gentleman Games. Maybe someone will beat it someday, but up until now, there has never been a game in this genre that hit numbers like Magic Mirror. And this is just the beginning. Many developers in the Gentleman Game circle had a feeling. They were witnessing history. Whether or not it's a big moment in history, whether Mirror is a gentleman's game or not, it still counts as history. Chapter 13, Celebration. Inside a hot pot restaurant in Magic City's Mixi Mall, Lucas was having hot pot with Rachel and Anna. Beef tripe o mason beef rolls. You can't call it hot pot if there's no beef. You're amazing, the game community is going crazy, and the players are loving it too. Anna, who now knew Lucas pretty well, looked excited as she stared at the news on her phone. Anna, don't call me amazing, I'm not anyone special, just call me Lucas, he waved it off. She was hyping it up, but Lucas knew clearly. The so-called buzz was really just within the niche circle of gentleman game developers. As for the overall game industry, at most it made a small splash in the indie game space, and not even a big one. Lucas was very clear about that. I feel like I shouldn't have said 50,000 sales at the start. Rachel spoke up, but she was smiling. Hearing that, Lucas put down his chopsticks and smiled back. Well, that's on you. You set the goal yourself, didn't you? I even wanted to invite you to join my company, but now it feels like I was dreaming, Anna said with a bit of frustration. Please leave my junior out of your mess. Your 3 games tanked worse and worse each time. Rachel stabbed right into the wound. Okay, sure, those 3 games flopped, but I had my reasons all right. I only handled the story and writing. The rest was outsourced. And to be fair, players did say the story parts were solid. Anna protested. By the way, Lucas, can you help me figure out what went wrong with those 3 games? Anna asked hopefully. Poor focus and bloated systems, Lucas said, glancing at his phone. After watching a few short videos online, he already had a good idea. Anna looked confused. Put simply, Anna, your games tried to include a little bit of everything, but you're making small-budget indie games, not AAA titles. Even big games mostly add features to support the main idea, not to be the main dish, Lucas explained. Anna nodded with a look of sudden realization. She kind of understood, maybe not fully. Still, even if she didn't totally get it, she felt too awkward to keep pressing the issue at the dinner table, so she switched topics. So what are your plans next, Lucas? I'm thinking of starting a small game studio, Lucas said with a smile. It wasn't a secret, it had been in his plans for a while. You're starting your own company, Anna was a little surprised. Yeah, Lucas nodded. Anna sat there thinking for a while, then made up her mind. Lucas, what do you think of me? Could I join you and help make games together? She still really loved game development. It's just that after 3 failed projects, she was feeling a bit discouraged. But now she realized something. Just because she hadn't made a hit game yet, did that mean she wasn't cut out for this? No, not at all. It just meant she hadn't found the right way to succeed yet, and finding someone strong to team up with, that might be the key. She had looked deeply into Mirror before coming here. And from that, she came to a conclusion: this game's success definitely wasn't just luck. After hearing Lucas's thoughts on her 3 games, she understood a bit, though not completely. But there was one thing she was sure of. This underclassman her best friend mentioned, making a game for the first time, definitely had the potential to become a top-level developer. Some game designers might make one great game thanks to a flash of inspiration, then fade into obscurity. But others have a clear vision of what kind of game they want to create. Lucas was clearly one of those people. Failing 3 games in a row made Anna face reality about her own skills. Listening to her talk, Lucas, still sitting across from her, fell into thought. He briefly looked at the 3 games she mentioned. Just like Anna said, the story was the main highlight. Most of the negative reviews were about the gameplay design, while most of the praise was about the story. And it wasn't just one game, all 3 followed the same pattern. That clearly pointed to good writing and story planning. If Lucas wanted to make more games in the future, he knew he couldn't do it all by himself. Things like the main story and overall structure, those he could handle. But writing out a full script, even with a system to help him, doing it all alone wasn't realistic. In his past life, games like Red Dead Redemption 2 had over 2,000 pages of main story text. If you stacked all the written content for the full game into A4-sized pages, it would be 2.4 meters tall. For something like Mirror, he could handle it solo, but for larger games with way more text, there was no way he could cover everything. Of course, no problem. If you're serious, Anna, once I get the company stuff sorted out, we can definitely talk more, Lucas said to her. All right then, I'll wait for your message, Lucas, Anna replied. Okay, if you two don't eat, I'm finishing all the beef, Rachel chimed in from the side. Hey Nixu, how about you join us too? With our skills, we could build something big together, Anna said with a cheerful smile, glancing at Rachel. Rachel took a sip of her milk and gave Anna a quick glance but didn't respond. I wonder how popular Mirror can get in the end, maybe break 1 million copies in the first month, Anna guessed. Cut that in half and it might be possible. Anything more than that is probably out of reach, Lucas said with a smile. He had a pretty clear idea of what to expect. After all, it was an 18-plus game, which came with a lot of restrictions. The group continued chatting and eating until around 9 p.m. Lucas then saw both girls off at their apartment complexes before catching a ride home. Chapter 14, Planning the Next Game. Mirror was a hit, there was no doubt about that. Of course, it wasn't going to reach the level of an AAA blockbuster or become some cultural phenomenon. But based on the current trend, Mirror had the potential to influence its entire category. Maybe even the future of this specific genre. In fact, even in his past life, after Mirror came out, it sparked a short-lived boom in adult games. During that time, almost every adult game started using the Match 3 plus Gal game combo. Of course, the quality varied a lot, some were good, some were just there to cash in. For a long time, the general impression of 18-plus games, both among players and in the game industry, was that they were low quality. Aside from a few special elements, they really didn't have much to be proud of. But Mirror was different. The Match 3 gameplay wasn't new, but Mirror added a full battle and character progression system on top of it. You fight, earn gold, then buy new skills and items. On top of that, the voice acting and character art was surprisingly touching. The story even made people reflect, and this was an 18-plus game. Not only that, the game's rating stayed around 9.2. Even as more players joined and the score started to shift a little, it remained impressively stable. This shows just how popular the game is. Also, since it's a short game with only a few characters, it's possible for some people to play it just to take advantage of the refund window. But very few players actually asked for refunds after buying Mirror. Of course, part of that is because Mirror only costs $10. So no matter how you look at it, Mirror really did become a hit. Because of its unique content, it's impossible for mainstream media and platforms to cover it. But in the adult game community, Mirror is without a doubt the biggest star right now. A lot of people in that circle even say it's a groundbreaking adult game. Compared to other poorly made games in the same genre, Mirror shines the brightest. And even within the industry, Mirror has inspired many adult game developers with new ideas. They realized this kind of adult game could actually sell this well. Mirror's arrival was like a shining lighthouse in the dark sea of the adult game industry. Like an oasis appearing out of nowhere in a burning desert. It's clear that Mirror is that lighthouse, that oasis. The strong demand from its target audience showed up clearly in the game's numbers. Sales just kept climbing. 70,000 copies sold in the first week, 160,000 total by the second week. By the end of its second week, according to third-party sales data, Mirror had sold 230,000 copies. For an adult game, that's unbelievable. Even compared to some high-quality indie games, those numbers are impressive. It made a lot of indie devs in the wider game industry take notice. It was just that shocking, and even though sales had started to slow down, that was just the normal trend of the market. After all, Mirror is a pretty niche game, meant for a very specific type of player. So, while the industry was amazed by Mirror's performance, Lucas also analyzed why it managed to do so well. As a game developer, he didn't believe that a game that succeeded in his past life would succeed again just because it had before. In fact, a lot of games that blew up back then had very limited reasons for their success. For example, if he remade Legend from his past life, Lucas figured there'd only be one outcome. It'd flop completely. The art isn't competitive, the gameplay isn't fresh, and the story and world-building are basically nothing. That was clearly a game that relied more on its era than on its quality. As for Mirror, Lucas believed it succeeded because it stood out. It's an 18-plus game, but it mixes a gal game experience with Match 3 gameplay. Of course, as either pure Match 3 or pure gal game, it wouldn't have been enough, but as a game for a thirsty niche audience, it hit the mark. It was that contrast and mix that made Mirror work. It's just like how players enjoy building systems in adult games or sneaking adult content into normal games. Looking at the sales numbers, Lucas knew he'd made the right call. Even if this game wouldn't bring him fame in the mainstream, since it's an 18-plus title, it got noticed in the industry. To most regular players, a $10 adult game wouldn't get much attention outside of its target group. Lucas also didn't plan to keep making this kind of game. This was just a way to get some initial funding. And the most important thing was, it made money. The game was priced at $10, and by now had sold nearly 230,000 copies. After taxes and the platform's cut, the first month's revenue was around $2.3 million. Lucas rubbed his chin and nodded slightly. With this, he now had his initial funding. Plus, with his title as a game designer, he got an official notice at the end of Mirror's first release week to go register with the game department in Magic City. As for the emotional points from the system, Lucas wasn't too satisfied. So far, he'd only collected enough for one 7 pull, which was around 700,000 points. But thinking about it more, that made sense. The emotional peak for players probably only lasted a minute or two. Some maybe only felt it for a few dozen seconds. Lucas figured the longest might have been 5 minutes tops. Given that, whatever, it was understandable. Looking at the game store's back-end stats, Lucas leaned back on the couch at home, thinking about what to do next. His current plan was still to focus on selling single-player games. Partly for reputation, and partly to keep growing on his own. Why not make a pay-to-win game? The reason was simple. It wasn't that he was scared of backlash. In fact, his past life had plenty of decent quality gacha games. But after thinking it through, Lucas decided not to go down that road. Mainly because it wasn't the right time. Also, the gaming environment in this parallel world was quite different from the one he remembered. Back then, mobile games ruled the market, and the free-to-play with in-app purchases model was the norm. But in this world, paid games with one-time purchases were more common. On top of that, gacha games had a lot of limitations. Take card games, for example. They went through several key phases in his past world. It started with titles like I Am MT, Great Master, and Million Arthur, which made card games popular. Then Dota Legends revolutionized things, kicking off the action card genre. Later, KOF 98 Ultimate Match OL saved the struggling SNK company, boosting its annual profits sixfold. That helped spark the wave of IP-based card games. That's when the genre started to diversify. Traditional stat-based games like Three Kingdoms, polished games like Onmyoji, and IP-driven ones like FGO were all key examples. Lucas had also done his research on this world's card-based mobile games. Right now, they were somewhere between high-quality development and IP branding. A mature industry chain had already formed. For Nebula Games, jumping into that space now wasn't as good as just making a new game from scratch. The reasons were the same: no money and no connections. Even if they could make the game without a big enough marketing budget. If it didn't go viral when it launched, it would just become free material for other game companies. Card games are different from other genres. Their gameplay and stat-based reward systems are easily copied. If this world didn't already have mature ideas about gacha and card games, that would be good news for Lucas. But right now, there were too many unknowns. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe and like the video and comment down if anything wrong in the story.